Greetings, Minecrafters, and welcome to another Minecraft discussion on this glorious day. I will tell you that I'm fortunate enough to be remote today, and the snow is just coming down in northern Vermont, and it's gorgeous. I guess we would call it champagne snow. It's just sparkly and beautiful. So, anyway, my name is Kimberly Quinn, and I got little Giovanni, the golden retriever, on the floor here by the fireplace. We look like we could be on the cover of a LL Bean catalog or something, except for that I'm wearing sweatpants. Probably they would dress me up a little bit more. But anyway, Giovanni and I, are here to talk about, although this wouldn't be him, to be honest with you, the nocebo effect as opposed to the placebo effect. So, living in nocebo mode, this is what we're talking about. Living in nocebo mode. Okay, so to start off, I mean, I'm going to I just don't like to make assumptions. So, just so everybody's on the same page, we'll just say, kind of discuss quickly what the placebo effect is. I think most people know, but we'll just be like a little refresher. So, that's the sugar pill that is often given in research studies, especially when they're talking about certain drugs being able to work. Like, let's just say like Prozac, for example, how they figured that out, right? Is a double blind study where they give 5,000 people actual Prozac and 5,000 people a placebo, who obviously diagnosed with anxiety or depression beforehand, and nobody knows who got what pill. It's all done by ID. And so at the end, the people who took all the pills report, how they're feeling. And it's less anxious, all the symptoms, less this, less jittery, more interested in life, d. And then the researchers look up and say, oh, wow, okay. And, 80% of them, I'm making this stat up, but, 85% of those actually had Prozac. And the ones who didn't report feeling much better had the placebo. And then you would find, okay, Prozac, apparently works, right? So, and that's been used for all kinds of different studies, acupuncture, this, that, this. Okay, so that's the placebo effect, is when something, basically our belief in something makes us feel better. So that would have been the group who just got the sugar pill. If they would have reported feeling less anxious, which happens all the time, feels less anxious, more excited about their lives, whatever, they would have experienced the placebo effect, because the very idea that they could be better by taking that sugar pill, even though they didn't know it was a sugar pill, made them feel better, made them feel good even. Okay, so that's what the placebo effect is. A nocebo effect is the exact opposite. It's when we have a belief. Let's say it's a pill that's going to make us sick. Let's say we give some people a pill that I actually had a disc on this once that I used for my college students. It was actually very funny, to be truthful. It was about electric shocks, which they didn't actually obviously impose. I think they were just like mild little nothing shocks. And they gave each group a pill, and one pill was supposed to have them experienced the shock less, and one was supposed to have them experience the shock more. And you watch the people do. They were college students, of course, because that's who they pick for these things, because they're usually broke and they'd rather do this experiment for $100 and flip pizzas, right? So, so the group jumping around like, ow, ow, stop, ow, stop. There was literally no shock. They had it in their head that taking that pill was going to give them pain. So that is an example of a nocebo. So the talk today is how our thoughts can literally make us sick. Just like taking a sugar pill that we believe is going to it's going to make us feel good, less anxious, or make us feel bad. It's going to enhance the effects of an electric shock. So that's the whole thing. Is people don't realize, Minecraft, right, is about becoming the boss of your brain, learning how to control your thinking, because thoughts come first and feelings second, and actions and behaviors first. So by controlling our thoughts, we literally, we really are writing the script for our lives. So the whole idea today, what we're going to get here, is also physical, because I love to talk about neuroscience. And I was just having this chat yesterday, actually. Was There are some people out there, I get so excited because they're saying, oh, and what I'm about to say is backed by neuroscience, and I'm like waiting, and then it doesn't happen. It's like this hook that's meant to grab people, and there are some people that just sort of use that and don't deliver. But that is not the case here. I'm a doctor in cognitive psych, and I could talk about neurons all day long and not have one bored minute, especially when it involves mental health, well being, positivity, and rewiring the mind to live our very, very best lives. I also want to just give a quick shout out to Joe Dispenza. I listened to him here and there, and he and I are definitely cut out of the same cloth as far as how we think. And he is all about the neurons. That's one reason I really enjoy listening to him, instead of like the false delivery people. They often have a good, the false delivery people often have a couple of good nuggets. They're just not supporting the nugget with anything substantial, which is fine. You can still run with the nugget, but Joe D does. He definitely does. And so, he was talking this morning about when I was listening to him about if we're living sort of in a sort of never seemingly never ending, constantly stressful environment, the toll this takes on the body and no, the mind and the body in that order, right? And so, we've got, social media can just be enormously toxic. I think we all know that. I did research that on just a few years ago and found that out, sadly, right up close and personal with students. But we know we spend too much time on there. Social comparison, even if you're a put together, professional, seasoned adult, it's just how it is. We get into that too much and we start, the brain's constantly is an association machine. So it's constantly trying to piece together information and relate to it. So if we hang on there long enough, it's gonna, it won't be good for us. We gotta, kind of monitor that. Also, there are things where, we might be in a relationship that's, in some way toxic. It can be anywhere along the spectrum, or a job. Maybe our job circumstance is really stressful. Maybe it's all the way toxic and we're getting agita in the car driving there, right? And so it's a situation that just seems like it's never going to end. Well, that really, really sort of boots the mind and body out of alignment, and that's kind of how Joe D defines stress. When the mind and body are sort of out of homeostasis, and we're living in this kind of survivor mind, is what I usually call it, survivor mind versus survivor brain versus learning brain. He calls it the creator brain, but it isn't different. And I'd just like to add in the other one of my other favorite definitions of stress is John Kabat-Zinn. He talks about stress being or coming from wanting this present moment, this life minute right now, to be something other than it is. Right? And stress typically comes out of adversity. It's not, we could get into the whole discussion. I actually do a thing on positive stress mindset. So there are just a couple of exceptions. For example, of positive stress, I have a theater kid. You go out there and it's, the curtain's about to open on the very first of the opening night, right? And she's the lead actor. You're gonna have some butterflies, maybe bats, but that also has us hyper focused on what we're doing. Or you're an Olympian waiting for the gun to go off, to run the track race, or you're waiting to do a ski race, or you're Michael Phelps waiting to swim, whatever it is. That's in that moment. But for the most part, the other 90+% of the time, stress is coming from, physical, mental, emotional threat, and it stems from adversity to the point that, again, that we feel threatened, we feel in danger, and we often feel, out of control, actually. And of course, okay, so, obviously, um, when our outer world is so out of control, that can have us thinking and feeling that our inner world is out of control too. But here's the thing, and the point of this entire episode is that even though we cannot always control what's going on in our immediate environment, we can control our inner environment, our inner world. And so examples of the different stress, our physical obviously would be like God forbid, a car accident, something like that, or even on a lesser level, sprain your ankle, toothache. I know for me, I've had some mostly as a teenager and in college. Actually, I just went through a bunch of like root canal situations. And if you've ever had an abscess tooth, I think I brought this up in another episode, you can't think about anything else because it's in your head area. Not that it's fun to have a sprained ankle, but you can at least put the ankle up and try to read a book or talk on the phone or something just to get your head out of there. But when it's your tooth, there's no running. And then we have, chemical stress. Obviously, it's like getting the Rona or the regular flu, something like that, right? And then emotional is just all the knowns that tend to creep into our heads. It might just be something seemingly simple as traffic, which then makes us late to work, and the boss is already pissed because the last time you were late, or the never-ending bills and debt and all that sort of thing. Concern about a relationship and where that's going, bah, 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 bah. And all of these different types of stress, and you might have more than one at a time, right? Because they can also be interwoven, can really kind of force us out of alignment, force the mind and body to be out of alignment. So when this perceived threat, and it's so primal. We've had this part of this talk before when the limbic system is of the brain is in the middle, and it's the fight versus or fight or flight or hide, right? It comes from way back when we were being, scooped up by pterodactyls and chased by T-Rex and all that kind of thing, and ducking into caves. And so that had a reason because we had to kind of be hyper aware of threats back then because otherwise we wouldn't be sitting here enjoying a podcast discussion now, would we? So thankfully the population kept moving, but now here we are, in 2023, and that same response to what might have been a raptor chasing us is now because we just realized we forgot to respond, to the three emails from, the boss. And now we look like we were taking a hiatus and really we were stressed out and trying to scurry around getting everything done, and we somehow blocked that out and blah 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 blah. And now we're sweating and our chest is tight and all that stuff. So that is called the sympathetic nervous system. And when it's meant to protect us, so when there's a real threat, like we hear we're in a dark place somewhere where we shouldn't be, I suppose, and we hear footsteps and the cell phone's dead and then our heart races. That has us hyper vigilant because we're in survival mode, which benefits our survival because we can hear better, see better, everything better. But here's the thing: is that threat circuit, which trips the cord for the sympathetic nervous system to get to sort of swing into gear. We can do that with mere thinking alone, so we don't have to have footsteps and noises or anything going on. We can be on our couch, in a nice dimly lit environment with a couple of candles and a partner, and still have these old thoughts coming through our minds as we look out the window, tripping a chord about something threatening, even though we're safe and cozy next to the fireplace with somebody we care about and a candle, because we can just pull all that thinking, or say, I should say, allow that thinking to come to the surface. And then, since the emotion of whatever thought it is attached, kind of like having a barnacle on the ass, it's attached to that memory, then we are in a place where we're feeling the past in the present. So now, because this threat, let's just say that, there's a T-Rex, or let's say a bunch of raptors. I feel like I'm feeling the raptors right now because they're so fast and speedy, and they're smaller than T-Rex and everything, like significantly, but they were like ferocious, right? So let's say we got out of Dodge, ducked into the cave with the family, started have some do some get some good quality family time, doing some wall art, cave wall art, something like that. And then we kind of hear some noises outside the cave, like the raptors are just waiting for us. Let's say there's like five of them, which maybe that's one for each person in your family. Maybe there's 10 of them. You're outnumbered 2 to 1. So the idea that that threat is waiting out there has the cortisol levels, because of course the cortisol is the main stress hormone, right? The cortisol levels are already high as we were chased in the cave. And we thought the raptors were gone, but we hear them kind of like, scratching their claws on the dirt out there, and that they're planning an ambush. That has us thinking like, oh God, we're gonna have to go outside the cave sooner or later. They're waiting for us. That's stressful. So we can bring that into the now again with thinking that we are still on, in a long-term threatening situation. So we go back to the toxic work environment. You've got agita every single day going into work, and agita when you're in the break room or the lunchroom or by the water cooler. Agita when you have to go by a certain somebody's office, even if they don't speak, because you just know how they can be with you. or it's a situation where it's a relationship and you're walking on eggshells around this person, whether it's a romantic partner or it's a roommate or whatever. That is a long-term stressful situation. So here's the thing: is cortisol is again, it's meant to keep us alive, right? The raptor thing. Cortisol is meant to stay in the body for about 3 hours because most immediate threats and danger are over by then, even if it doesn't work out well. Okay, like a sexual assault. Most sexual assaults are over within 3 hours. So, as horrible as that example is, once the threat is over, the brain knows it's over, and the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in, which kind of calms us down. Even after a horrible thing, we know that that there's not another sexual assault or right behind that one. You can come up with all different examples, but or let's say it's a car accident or something. Most whatever it is over in 3 hours. However, when the threat or perceived threat, remember you can be on your couch with a candle and still put yourself through all this. If that is an extended threat situation, cortisol goes from being helpful at keeping us alive to actually being toxic in the body. And it's like Rambo with an AK-47 or something, just shooting all these um, healthy neurons, especially in the hippocampus area, which is very involved in long-term memory. But it's very important to know that when we are living in nocebo mode, we're talking about our thoughts making us sick, literally, then we are headed for disease. And when we're in nocebo mode or what we call survival brain mode, we all of our energy, because it is meant to be for survival, so we don't want to throw it out because we need to survive, obviously. However, when it's a perceived threat we're creating ourselves, that's also going on and on and on, we have less and less of our inner energy because all of it is headed. It's kind of like an all hands on deck situation. There's a threat, somebody might hurt us, might mug us, might all the energy, the senses are fully tuned and everything, they go to that threat. So again, if it's a perceived threat, all that inner energy is no longer available to learn new things or to be creative. So I've done a similar podcast using the term learning brain versus the creative brain, but it really isn't different because when we're in survival brain, that is always 100% of the time, whether that threat is real or perceived, which still feels real, obviously, but perceived is not really somebody they're going to hurt you, then 100% of the time the survival brain is going to trump the learning brain, is going to dominate because obviously survival becomes before anything else. So that's I did in fact I did a workshop. Well, I've done all kinds of workshops on this, but this particular one was at a place, a really cool place, which was is for neurodivergent children and teenagers. And so the whole talk was, basically, and also we as professors where I am are very aware that we are wasting our time if if there's all kinds of anxiety in the room. Like, let's say right before midterms or finals, I always do a break kind of thing there because nothing is going in. Very little, if nothing, is going in because that's just how we're wired. If we're feeling threatened or we're all clogged up with anxiety, it doesn't have to be an assault. It can be anywhere in between. We're in survival brain mode, thinking about when class is over, going and doing something, getting out of here, getting out of Dodge. It's not, the new information is not coming in. Now, Joe Dispenza talks a lot about the creativity part, which again isn't different, learning new things and also having our working memory freed up to not only take in the good things, but to let the creative juices flow. That is also not going to happen if we are feeling as if we are threatened. And so another thing that's going on here is when we have extended stress going on for a prolonged period of time, the mind is actually teaching the body how to be in a state of distress, stress or distress, right? And to be hyper vigilant, hyper alert. And so what happens is the body, the mind speaks the language of thoughts, right? The body speaks the language of feelings. The body learns very quickly, okay, I've got to be on top of things. I got to plan I've got to feel ready for every possible scenario and rehearse this and maintain in this state of hypervigilance, and it actually takes on a life of its own where the body learns to be addicted to stressful situations. So the body's like to the mind, okay, I got this. You don't even need to remind me anymore. I'm ready. My chest is tight. I'm kind of on edge. I'm not able to take anything in. Not um not at ease, not calm, not quiet, because I need to be ready. You've taught me that I need to be ready. So we can actually we're talking about these environments we're in, right? With a bad relationship, maybe it's a bad roommate situation, maybe um, bad living situation, whatever, toxic job situation. We can actually become, when this becomes prolonged, we can actually become addicted to a life we don't even like. Let's say that again. When we are in nocebo mode, right? We're headed for disease. We become addicted to a life we don't even like. So this happens because we're running it all, we're rehearsing it, right? Running the thoughts, and then the body takes on its life of its own. And so it's important to realize that the threat circuit is flipped on and stays on while we're doing this. So that's the nocebo mode, stuck in fight or flight. And so here's the thing, and this is where we're going to take a turn here. We're going to flip the script. If our thoughts can literally make us sick, which we know there's certain cancers or certain lupus is very stress related, and that, I mean, it's more complicated than that, but we know that stress makes most things worse. Okay, it can actually even cause some illnesses. So if we know that thoughts can literally make us sick by making our immune system plummet, right? The cortisol. Joe was talking about this actually when because as he did an experiment as cortisol levels went up. I think it was the I can't how it's hard to say it, immunoglobulin. Anyway, it's the immune system makes it plummet. So there, as cortisol goes up, it's bad news. The immune system just gets beaten up. So the important thing to know is that we have control here. So once the bodies start to become addicted, mind and body start to become addicted, this is like a big wet snowball rolling downhill, right? So it's a little bit tougher once it gets going to stop it. However, here's the thing, we absolutely can. And the first step, like anything else we talk about, is awareness, because we cannot do what we do not know. We cannot do what we do not know. Once we become aware that whatever it is no longer working for us, right there, we have landed in our power place, and we can turn this stuff around. Okay, so once again, we want to shift out of survival brain, and that's gonna it takes a definite awareness first, and also commitment, because remember that survival brain is going to dominate, and when it does, these are coming from Joe D. These 5 things here, I wrote them down. Resources we kind of go tos when we're in nocebo mode or survival brain, same thing, is compete, like we got to put the dukes up, and then we fight, or we might manipulate, because manipulate just another way to control, right? It's just more subtle. And then the fourth one is we might even try harder, try to make it happen. And then the fifth one is we kind of hope and wish. That's kind of like where, I guess, saying uncle, or playing pretending to be dead, or something, like when you're kids when you're little, and or like some non-human animals do, to hoping that the predator leaves, right? Is to hope or wish. So instead of oh, and actually he says this was sobering to me, that 70% of the time, 70% of the time, most people are living in survival brain, or the nocebo mind. Most people are living in survival mode. That's just nuts. So, and then it also it's important to ask ourselves when we get, this, I guess, at this time in the conversation, right? We talked about, ongoing stressful relationships. And on the spectrum of anywhere from a little stressful, middle stressful, to completely toxic, making us physically sick, right? Is anyone or anything, think the relationship, the job situation, whatever it is anyone or anything worth living in this extremely stressful state of survival? I hope you don't have to think about it too much. Okay, so where do we go from here, you ask? That's a good question. Number one, awareness. Yet we have to come into this realization that of whatever it is no longer working for us, or really is working for us. But in this particular case, we're talking about nocebo mode, where our thoughts are making us sick because we're residing in survival mode rather than learning or creator mode, right? So we have to get that. That's the first thing. Then we need to commit to it. We need to commit to it, and we also need to set the bar at what's doable, which is do our best. Because if that big wet snowball has momentum going downhill for a long time, it is going to take a while. You can't really expect to turn it around in a day or a week. So have patience with ourselves and self-compassion. That is enormously helpful. Realizing that we are on the right track and we will get there. We are on the right track and we will get there. Okay, so awareness, commitment, patience, and self-compassion. And then here's the plan. There is no way around making the very deliberate choice to calm the mind down, because where a calm mind is, this is where the power is. So in order to land in your power place, you've got to calm the mind down. So we've talked about all the different, forms of meditation. I know Joe has some out there. I'm a big fan of mindfulness because it's not as easy for me to sit. There's sitting ones, lying down ones, all these kind of things. I'm more of a meditation on the go person, and so in fact, I'm headed out to the woods shortly after this episode with little Giovanni because it's this lovely nor'easter with loads of snow, and we are going to be out in the woods in the middle of the snow, taking it all in and just breathing and taking in the sparkly, beautiful winter wonderland atmosphere, and that's what works for me. That is how I calm my mind down. If it's not snowing, I go out and I sit by the brook, usually not sitting, maybe a little bit, maybe for a couple seconds. Walking by the brook, just hiking straight up the hills, running, snowshoeing, whatever like that. But however you calm down your mind, and binging Netflix does not count. No screens. That is no screens at all. Completely off. Preferably not even on your body, because if they buzz, it's going to take your attention away from the moment. So just remember too, John Kabat-Zinn's definition of stress, which is that stress is wishing for the present moment to be something other than it is. Like right now, I've got the fire going, and Giovanni's here, and the snow's falling outside. And even though I say, "Oh, well, she's doing a podcast," yes, I'm doing a podcast, but I'm mindfully doing a podcast. I'm not thinking about anything else, which means I'm right here in this moment with all of you. So mindfulness, and the next thing is got to. This is a big got to. The mindfulness and the gratitude thing are two have tos. Because when we start a gratitude journal and coming up with and writing down 3 things we are grateful for every day with the words I am grateful for, I am grateful for, I am grateful for. Got to have that part if you're going to rewire your mind for happiness. Gratitude is the master key to happiness. So being in the moment and being grateful, because when we are actually in the moment being grateful 100% with whatever it is, 100% mindful and grateful in that moment, there's no room for anxiety. There is no room for depression. There is only room for kind of being in that place of being, actually. And that is it. So we want to start working our way out of the nocebo survival mode and into learning the learning brain and the brain of the creator. This is Kimberly Quinn signing off from the beautiful northern Vermont. Have a mindful day.